reaction. They now become nourishment for you, and you don't have a reaction. If this enzyme is blocked out because of alcohol, blocked out because you had so much of this and you're not making enough because your small intestine doesn't have enough probiotics, because your diet is imbalanced, because you're taking a drug or you're stressed out and the epithelial is unhappy, the mucous border has been stressed, the DAO is decreased, and any one of these can leave the small intestine, get into the bloodstream, and could go to any organ in the system, causing almost any symptom. So a food intolerance, not necessarily symptom specific, but it is specific to the fact that histamine leaves the small intestine and reacts in the body. That's where you get the symptoms. Hours later from eating, get a headache, nausea, wheezing, a runny nose, menstrual cramps, diarrhea, cramping, palpitations, arrhythmia, blood pressure changes, on and on and on. They'll be different for each one of us, but we'll start to recognize that there is a relationship to our food that has systemic symptoms that food intolerance that we used to think of lactase or casein or soy or corn or fructose do not have. Completely unique. Histamine intolerance, you can't just pick one food. With lactase, you can pick a food category. With fructose, you can pick a category. You can't do that with histamine intolerance because it's triggered by such a broad array of foods. And I mentioned earlier the maturation process, the degree of freshness. The fresher the food, the less histamine content in general. And you can't cook it out, you can't freeze it out, you can't process it out. It's stable there no matter what you do with it. Here are some of the common foods that have some of the highest levels. And the highest levels, they didn't put in red wine, beer, champagne. They got it too. How many people flush after they have a little red wine or beer? It'll be a biogenic amine, histamine. And this list goes on and on and on. Histamine liberators. So let's say the histamine content of your diet is not that high, but then you have foods that have an ability to liberate the histamine to trigger a chain reaction like a ping pong ball bouncing around, liberating histamine, causing these reactions in the body. And all these foods, anybody's heard of chocolate? Nuts, shellfish, things that are common, pineapple, mango, papaya, citrus fruits, strawberries, tomatoes. Almost everything that we eat that we think is healthy can actually trigger some of these seemingly unrelated symptoms that people have. Inhibitors. So our body should make it, when we are healthy, it makes it an adequate amount for our diet with no problem. In the world today, with all the drugs, from painkillers, asthma medications, it's interesting that histamine intolerance can cause asthma-like symptoms. And asthma medication can actually cause histamine wheezing symptoms to increase. So you can have asthma medication and it can exacerbate the histamine symptoms. Blood pressure medications and antibiotics. We talked about alcohol. It's a double whammy. While it has good aspects, it decreases DAO activity, so you can't digest your histamine, but it increases its absorption. So even the little bit that is there could act like a much larger thing. These are types of drugs. All of them can increase histamine intolerance reaction because it stops your ability to break it down. If you break it down, there's no problems, no symptoms. If you don't break it down, it's highly active in the body, gets into the bloodstream, and can create the symptoms. And this, you may know, this is a dietary supplement, often used as a drug or as a cough suppressant there. Classic therapy, and part of what I used to use in practice, is following this direction. Try to have a histamine-free diet. Almost impossible. Anybody knows that trying to follow a diet program, it's completely difficult to avoid these biogenic amines, which are in everything from orange juice to bananas. Almost any healthy food you think about will have some degree of some biogenic amine. And once you're sensitized to it, you seem to react and you'll escalate more and more, which is why people end up limiting their diet significantly because they think they have an allergy or food intolerance, and they go to start eating just one type of food. I can only eat peanut butter. Or the classic one that I remember is coming in, I can only have saltines and ginger ale. That's it. And they go to avoiding, and then, trying to avoid histamine-liberating substances, then basically you're on a water diet. Conventional docs will use the antihistamines, and basically they come with all kinds of side effects, and they don't do the job. What we want to do is something that's a lot smarter. The Europeans in the last few years have done the research, have isolated the reason why this exists, the enzyme that is involved, and have figured out the technology to deliver DAO, naturally derived, that you can take orally, and it can work. The DAO is now encapsulated, enteric-coated. You can take it before a meal, before the pizza, the red wine, the shrimp, the avocado, any product that you know that causes a problem. And I suggest that most everybody try it for a week and then see what goes away. I did not think I had a histamine intolerance until I started using it. And I realized the runny nose I got almost immediately with eating food went away. My wife did not think that she had a histamine intolerance until we started using it. And realizing that it's not horrible, it's not life-threatening, but it causes a lot of uncomfortable symptoms. And we have the product that is brought in, histamine, patent pending, clinically proven. It is the DAO enzyme specific for breaking down the biogenic amines, breaking down histamine, and if you take it 20 minutes before a meal that has them, you can eradicate, in most cases, having any symptom or discomfort. What we have found as well, if somebody is having their symptoms after they ate, they can take it and within an hour reduce their symptoms by the vast majority, 80, 90%. Enteric-coated, it makes it through the stomach, survives the acid, gets into the small intestine, and because of the sodium bicarbonate, it releases the enzyme where the body would naturally make the DAO and does its work right then and there. Clinical studies validate that when taken, you can significantly reduce the symptoms that you have when you take DAO regularly with a meal. What's the smartest strategy is to decrease an overload of histamine-rich foods. So if you know that you have a strong reaction, it's good to decrease the large doses, the large meals. But if you take the DAO consistently with your meals and you decrease the large amounts, most people don't have problems. You can start eradicating the discomfort from the GI system to whatever it is, from wheezing to heart issues, blood pressure, skin flushing, itching. They can become a thing of the past. You can manage it. It makes sense to be moderate with your intakes. Can't have pizza every day and red wine at every meal. But you can start including these foods when most people were living a life of living without. Studies in Europe confirm finally that we have a product that works. It's far more important and necessary than what we do from gluten or casein or fructose or lactose. By far the largest reaction that people have, the biggest problem that is in our society with food, is the biogenic amines. Histame.com to learn more information. I have a website, drmarcuslow.com. We're going to have a book signing after the lecture and the questions.